Hi everyone, Phil Giunta returning to read another story for you on this brisk April evening. Much like the last one I read, Once More with Feeling, tonight's tale was also published by the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group in our 2019 anthology called Rewriting the Past. This is again a gathering of short stories and poems and essays written by our membership, loosely adapting the theme rewriting the past. Anything from going back and changing the past to wishing for a different past, or in the case of my story, simply returning to an old neighborhood to reminisce about the life you lived there and to complain about all the changes, as many of us often do when we go back and revisit our old haunts. There's a slight twist at the end of this little comedy story, and I hope you enjoy it. It's called Memory Lane Ain't What It Used to Be. A midsummer stroll down memory lane turned out to be far less nostalgic than Jean and Dottie Spencer had anticipated. In fact, it was downright depressing. Did we make a wrong turn? Dottie glanced from one end of the street to the other. Where's old Bert Hepworth's Dutch Colonial? And the Marconi's bungalow? Jean pointed to a row of modern, nondescript townhouses incongruously crammed between two Cape Cods. Oh, well, I guess everything changes. And not for the better. Jean shook his head at the glut of vehicles parked bumper to bumper along both sides of the narrow street. It was never like this in our day. There must be 4 cars to every house. And we wouldn't dream of letting our sidewalks go to pot like this, all cracked and buckling with weeds everywhere. Don't people take pride in their neighborhood anymore? For the Spencers, Memory Lane took the form of Sandalwood Drive, near the outskirts of the city. It was here that the couple had purchased their first and only home nearly 60 years ago. It was here that they had raised 3 children, made lifelong friends, and become pillars of the community. Now, however, all of that was ancient history, and one that had obviously lost much of its luster. I'm almost afraid to see what our old house looks like now. Remember what Carmen said to Gail and Alex the other day while we were watching over the grandkids? The new owner is some single young lady, Dottie corrected. That Carmen used to work with. She gave the place a makeover before moving in, so expect to see some changes. Finally, they stopped at the corner of Sandalwood and Highland Avenue and peered up at the rustic 2-story colonial. Jean threw up his hands. Now, why did she replace a perfectly good metal roof with shingles? Remember when my brother and I used to get up there every summer and paint it? And every summer you griped about the heat. Jean leaned forward and peered over the neatly trimmed boxwoods along the front of the house. And she replaced the old wooden porch with concrete. Remember how I used to varnish it to a perfect sheen every spring? And every spring you bellyached about your hay fever. Oh, those were the days. Hey, remember? The roar of a lawnmower engine curtailed any further reminiscing. Jean and Dottie followed the noise around the corner, stopping at a chain-link fence that enclosed the backyard. There, a slim young woman in a sweat-soaked tank top and denim shorts pushed the mower across a narrow lawn speckled with dandelions and white clover. Jean folded his arms. You know, back in our day, single young ladies didn't own homes or mow lawns. The world's a different place now, Jean. Like I said earlier, everything changes. Oh, damn! Dottie pointed toward the shed in the back corner of the yard. That hussy tore out my blue hydrangeas and our dogwood tree. I used to love to watch it bloom pink every spring. Like you said, Dottie, everything changes. At least she kept the red maple in the middle of the yard. Remember when you and I planted that about 5 years after we moved in? Now it's taller than the house. Ooh, speaking of which, I wonder how it looks inside. If what we've seen so far is any indication, you probably wouldn't recognize the place. Dottie put her hand on Jean's chest. Look, the cellar doors are open. Let's sneak in for a quick look. I don't think that's a good idea, Dottie. We should be getting home. What's the hurry? We have all the time in the world. We'll be in and out before she finishes cutting the grass. Dottie dashed through the gate and across the yard. Dottie, wait! Ah, good grief! Jean followed, but didn't speak again until they had descended through the doors and were standing in the basement. What's gotten into you? It's like being young again, off on another escapade. Like the old days when we were dating, remember? Well, of course I remember. Ghost hunting on Halloween night in the cemetery across from your parents' house, skinny dipping in the lake up the road from the high school, climbing out on the roof of your uncle's beach house in the middle of the night to stargaze. Well, the heavens weren't the only thing we admired that night. Hence the reason we named our firstborn after your uncle. Yeah, I guess two old souls like us deserve one last adventure. Jean motioned Dottie ahead. But let's make it quick. I feel like we're intruding. At least the steps are still in the same place and just as solid as the day I built them. You always did good work, love. Dottie reached the top of the stairs first. For a moment, she froze in the doorway before turning back to her husband. Brace yourself, Jean. Why? Dottie stepped aside as they emerged into the dining room. It's gone. All the blue and green floral wallpaper I put up for you, it's all gone. Instead, the walls throughout the entire floor were painted a conservative antique white. Jean's shoulders slumped. It's like our past has been swept away. Our home has lost all of its character. It's not our home anymore, Jean. We changed the decor when we moved in. Why can't the new owner do the same? But it's as if... Jean's voice quivered as he leaned against the wall and lowered his head. We were never here at all, Dottie finished. She gripped her husband's shoulders and gently maneuvered him away from the wall. Come on, Jean, let's go upstairs. What's the point? Humor me, Jean. We'll never come back here again after today, I promise. It was more of the same on the second floor. Every inch of wallpaper had been removed and the hallway painted with the same drab off-white as the first floor. The 3 bedrooms were a different matter. Each had been given its own distinct color. Well, that's something at least. Jean entered the smallest of them, once Alex's room, which the new owner had converted into a home office. He ran a gentle finger down the wall alongside the door trim, just as Dottie joined him. Remember how we used to measure the kids' heights on the wall here every year and mark them in pencil? That's all gone now. I know. Dottie moved past Jean toward the opposite wall, where a series of color images, printed on letter-sized paper, were pinned to a corkboard. Oh, Jean, these are pictures of the house from years ago. She pointed to each one in turn. That's you and I sitting on the porch the way it used to look. And there's you and Alex up on the roof getting ready to paint it. And Carmen and Gail standing with their prom dates under the pink dogwood. You can see the blue hydrangeas and... Dottie's voice cracked as she covered her mouth and leaned against her husband. This was our life, Jean. Where did she get these? Jean kissed away the tears from her cheek and glanced down at the desk. Apparently from this. He held up a 4x6 photo album and began flipping through it before handing it to Dottie. And here's a letter addressed to our daughter. Jean picked up the paper from atop the laser printer and stepped over to the window. Dear Carmen, I found this little photo album in the attic and wanted to return it to you. I hope you don't mind that I made color copies of some of the photos as a way of preserving the beautiful work your parents put into the property. As you know, the metal roof had rusted and some planks on the old porch had rotted since your parents lived here. The dogwood tree succumbed to some kind of disease and had to be removed. But I'm doing my best to maintain as much of the old charm as possible, while also making it low maintenance for me. See, I told you, Jean, she's just making the house her own. Our past hasn't been entirely swept away. Despite all that's changed in the old neighborhood, someone here will still remember us. Jean set the letter on the desk. You're right, Dottie, as always. He tilted his head. Hey, the lawnmower's stopped. We'd better go. Dottie laid the photo album atop the letter and followed her husband downstairs. They dashed across the living room until Jean halted abruptly at the front door. Dottie nearly collided with him. Now what? A gray steel door? She had to replace this, too? Remember that beautiful mahogany and glass door I hung all by myself? Jean! Just saying. He stepped aside and motioned for Dottie to precede him. Ladies first. She rolled her eyes and hurried out to the porch. I can't blame her for putting a steel door in, Jean. She's a young woman, And this isn't like the old days. So you keep reminding me. Well, at least the old firehouse is still where it used to be. So many fond memories of volunteering with those crazy guys. And I was delighted to see St. Margaret's Soup Kitchen still serving the poor. I always enjoyed cooking for them after the kids were out on their own. I know you did, Dottie. You were always God's little helper. Eventually, they came upon the familiar green wrought iron fence of home. Albeit ever so humble. Well, at least we know most of the people here, and it doesn't change very much. Except when new neighbors arrive. Dottie hooked her arm through Jean's as they passed through the front gate of Holy Cross Cemetery and vanished beneath a canopy of swaying pink dogwoods and red maples.